Okay.
And then from there, I decided to go to polytheistic ones. My family comes from a Norse background, so I thought it'd be really fun to do Norse mythology.
Yeah.
So I did a little studying on that. And then I went to Hawaii once, and I was just like, oh, they've got a lot of fun deities there. Yeah. So the Polynesian and Hawaiian gods and goddesses.
Wow.
So I've got all kinds of stuff on that. And I think the more I studied into it, just the more I began to really just enjoy mythology in general.
Okay, more like an entertainment sort of thing?
Yeah, because at some point in time, I stopped trying to search, and I just wanted to learn.
Yeah.
Because it was fun. I enjoyed it. I really did. I loved hearing all the stories.
Definitely. I do enjoy those. Not to interrupt you, but I do enjoy the stories of Samson, the sort of dating Goliath, Job. A lot of the more, it's stuff that as a kid I would hear, and it was exciting. We sat in church a lot, so it didn't take a lot to excite me, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then the more you read things, you start, as with in all mythologies, you start to see that maybe it's not so kind. I mean, there are some really mean-spirited things about some of these stories, Job.
Yeah.
And
that was a pretty horrific situation.
That was a really bad one, but that's okay.
I guess, as a kid, there were some pretty bad things that happened.
Well, Grimm's fairy tales, I mean, it's all designed to teach a life lesson.
Yeah.
But I don't buy into it as a literal or a religious purpose anymore. But they're still fun to read and learn about, especially with the comparison and contrasting.
Definitely, yeah. I think that really start to think of in that sense until I gotten older. I've read Søren Kierkegaard. He's a Danish philosopher. You mentioned the Scandinavian. My mom's from Copenhagen, Denmark.
Oh, wow.
And so that's pretty interesting. Yeah. So Søren Kierkegaard he was a Christian, but he had this idea that, well, long story short, basically, is what happens is there are places in the Bible where theology and morality are clearly seen as separate, and you can tell because they actually conflict.
Yeah.
In the situation, for example, a great situation is where if Abraham wasn't willing to sacrifice his son, then it would have been seen as a lack of faith. So there you have an example where morality and theology they disconnect. So when I heard that, it was a long time ago actually. I heard that. It's slowly been in my mind. The idea that you can be a moral person, you can care for people, you can have genuine relationships with people, and you can. But you don't have to buy into all the theology, all the rules and stipulations, all the shame, the dogma, all the things that you can never.
That's a really good one to bring up too, because that's a lot of what happened with. When I started to pull away, I felt less shame.
Yeah.
And even today, things that family members might see as controversial or what have you, I'm just very accepting of it, I think. Just very blasé about certain things.
Yeah.
So
would you agree that lack of shame might make it easier for you to forgive other people, maybe for you? Because for me it has. I used to, because there's a difference, this difference between being embarrassed and being ashamed.
Sure.
I don't think my experience with religion is that I was never embarrassed into doing something the right thing. I was never. I always felt so condemned that I lost. And I needed saving. I was flawed. I was fundamentally broken, and I needed outside help. This sort of thing is. So now that that's gone, I think that I'm able to be a lot more compassionate.
It also is if you don't take something as being morally reprehensible or even a gray area, then there's no reason for anyone to ask for forgiveness. I mean, if they choose to ask for it, that's awesome. I'm very easy to forgive them for things that I just don't find that severe.
Yeah.
But that's a very good point.
Now, what you just said, that's totally true. And looking back and see that was one change that happened with me as well. I started realizing once I took my beliefs seriously enough to require more from them. Instead of just making proclamations, I required more from my beliefs. I started realizing that I had a sense of entitlement. Okay.
When you say more from your beliefs, what can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by more from my beliefs is, when I was a Christian, when I told people I was a Christian, when I told people I was a believer, I wanted a relationship with God, and I looked around and everyone seemed to have a relationship with God, and they would tell me that, I had this revelation, or I had this thought, this, or this I prayed and this worked, this happened. And then I had that, and then I'd read in the Bible about how the New Testament church was and how they were all putting their money together and how they were, these amazing things were happening and the church was growing exponentially, which it was at the time. It was growing exponentially. And I just that's not like my life at all.
Yeah.
So I just felt really I felt out of the loop, and I really beat myself up about it. And I think that what I did then is I pushed all my doubt down. I didn't want to address my doubt at all. I just pushed it all the way down. And whenever people would ask me, they would disagree with me, I would I basically would get upset. I would get upset because I was uncertain myself. And when they would tell me, well, they don't believe in God, or they just, that my uncertainty started to come forward. So basically, that's what I'm trying to say. So as far as taking my beliefs more seriously, that's what I mean. I mean, acknowledging the fact that I don't believe this, and saying, well, why do I believe it? And instead of just accepting what I was raised in and what I was raised around. That's what I mean by, it's a long-winded way of explaining. That's what I mean by taking it more seriously.
Okay.
Or requiring more from it.
Sure.
So.
And which denomination?
Well, I was, like a lot of families, I had a multi-denominational family.
Okay.
So my dad, I believe, was Baptist, but he was kind of quiet about it. And my mom was Pentecostal. She was a Pentecostal. So they kind of conflicted a lot. And but for the most part, I grew up as a Pentecostal. As a fundamentalist Pentecostal. So yeah, it was very exciting. Yeah.
From what I've read about them, they're unique.
And there's different kinds. There's always different kinds. Well, all religion, as David Silverman has pointed out many occasions, all religion is cafeteria religion.
I can see that.
Yeah, all religion is cafeteria religion, and the holy books are put together, like the Bible, for instance, was put together. People pick and choose. Well, this book doesn't. I don't like. One reason why one of the books was the Gospel of Thomas, I believe, wasn't allowed in was because people were tired of preaching from it because it was so horrific. So. But yeah, so basically, all religions are cafeteria religions, and people would just pick and choose basically what they want to believe out of that. So.
Definitely, that's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, it's a long-winded way of answering the question.
That's okay. We have time to fill. It
happens.
Out.
You call in and talk to us about anything you'd like to talk about. Atheism, theism, the great debate. We would love to hear from you. Definitely.
Okay, looks like we have an email question.
Oh, great.
We've got Timothy from Fort Wayne.
Okay.
I've always been curious what out-and-out atheists do during the holiday season and their feelings towards Christian holidays that their family likely still celebrate. In your experience, do many atheists still celebrate Christmas or Easter, for example? And why would they if they do? Is it more like an obligation or something more atheists still enjoy? Good question, Timothy. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Well, I can say that I think that the majority, not majority, but at least a lot of atheists, they celebrate holidays just like everyone else. They even celebrate Easter. Sometimes they celebrate religious holidays because as I get out and I'm more out about being an atheist, I was talking to people, and you'll get those atheists who lean in. They're Christians to everyone else, but they lean in and say, I don't really believe this stuff. But I can't tell my parents.
Yeah.
There's no way I can tell my church congregation. I've grown up with these people, So the answer to the question is, yes, they celebrate all these. Now, do they think of it the same way? No. And it does change. The context is way different. So
I agree.
That's my experience from and I do celebrate Christmas because I think it's fun. I like cooking, and I like being around good food and people you like, spend time with. So what was your experience?
With mine, mainly, I think Christmas is the only one we still really actually do. Occasionally Easter, we might do something at my mom's house.
Okay.
And, but it's more just a family gathering. It's not really anything to do, at least for me, with the church or anything like that. It's just basically everyone comes together. Sometimes family comes in from out of town. We get, we see each other that we haven't seen. So it's just more of a good communal family gathering. But it's still a joyous occasion. Yeah. Very much so. Gifts are still exchanged and things like that.
All the good parts of
chocolate is still eaten on Easter.
Yeah, there you go. So you have to. All the good parts.
Forego that part. But pretty much for me, that's how it is. It's just a great family gathering time.
Yeah.
It could be December 25th. It could be June 12th. It really, for me, it's just about getting together.
I totally agree. That makes a lot of sense. I I think that I really do celebrate Christmas now when I really sit back, because I haven't thought about it. It's a good question. I haven't thought about it recently. I really just, it's a very human thing. It's a very human thing for people to get together. We have the capacity to empathize.
Sure.
And to, it's very life affirming to spend time together. And I think that's what these atheists do. And these are our experiences. But some would disagree. Some would say they don't celebrate any holidays. They're even offended at the question, but like we call Thursday, which was originally meant Thor's-day.
Thursday.
Yeah. And we say, I know that, but I still call it that. And it's,
shout out to Norse mythology.
Yeah, Norse mythology. That's going to be the theme of the show tonight, everyone. Norse mythology, which would be exciting. You should do, if you feel comfortable, do like a little segment on, that'd be exciting. So
I'd have to freshen up again, but
yeah, I would love to hear it. I think there's a lot
fun.
of viewers who might enjoy hearing that as well. So I hope we answered your question. So I guess it really just depends on who you ask.
Yep. No, it's a great question. It's one that I don't know about you, but we get a lot. How sometimes it's not even like, what do you celebrate for Christmas? It's how could you celebrate Christmas?
Yeah, it's like like
we're no longer worthy.
Like you killed the Easter bunny for not celebrating Easter.
Right.
We did nothing wrong. We just
like, well, why are you buying your kids that giant Easter basket when that's not what Easter's about? But that's okay. We're not judging.
No.
So it's all right. So, but yeah. All right. Timothy, thank you again for your question. We appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you.
So, okay, where are we before that?
Oh my.
You were talking about...
I think I might have been poorly answering one of your questions.
You were very long-windedly anyway, but no,
I do that.
About,
that's what I'm known for.
Just basically your backstory and faith story and things like that, because I wasn't here last time, so I need to hear it too.
And that shows yet to air. So I was raised as a Christian, and I was a fundamentalist Christian. That's what most viewers would likely consider to be a fundamentalist Christian. And I came to Fort Wayne in 2007. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. What makes something fundamentalist?
Well, like as an example, like I would have told someone when I was a Christian, I would have told someone that, why don't you celebrate Christmas for the real reason? I would say, why, Santa Claus. Is it good to teach your kids Santa Claus? Because I had a different myth that I was trying to push, that rather than Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. So that's when we were fundamentalists. I mean, I had this approach, this idea that it is a sort of entitlement where you just kind of like, that's the church, but this is the church. That we're closer aligned to the text. We are closer, our standards.
So is it more strict then, in line with what is taught? More literal?
Strict. More literal,
okay.
More along the Kent Hovind sort of thing. Yeah, and that's how I was raised. And it's easy to, the thing is when you surround yourself with people who agree with you, and you become dependent on them, and you have this sunk cost where you invest a lot into things. You'll start going along with things that sometimes are morally reprehensible. And when you look back, you're like, why would I treat someone like that?
You don't have any stories like that, do you?
Well, I just remember being condescending to a lot of people.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of
Sure.
those types of situations, at least I resulted in being condescending. There's a sense of entitlement, and I had mentioned that sense of entitlement before. But there's this kind of fundamental entitlement. I first Noam Chomsky. I saw this interview way back. And that was about 3 years ago. I saw it. Noam Chomsky was talking about the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. This seems a little off, but I swear I'll get back.
No problem.
So he was talking about the Vietnam War, and they were talking, and he had made the comment that we're all guilty. Now that kind of struck a chord with me because I used to be a fundamentalist. So like, wow, because I used to say everyone's guilty,
Right.
And so I want to know what he meant. Basically, the idea was that we're all guilty of distancing ourselves from the suffering of people who are less right than we are. So they're talking about how is it the atrocities happen? How is it that during the disabled people and gypsies and Jews were allowed to be taken advantage of? Is because there's this entitlement where that's their group and this is my group and we're right. And I realized, oh my gosh, I had that same entitlement, and I almost immediately realized where it was from. I thought it was built into the fundamental idea of heaven and hell, because with heaven, the righteous, those who are right, who know the truth, they will inherit life everlasting.
Yeah.
But the unrighteous will burn forever, to be cast out. So it was built into the very foundation, very fundamental thing that, so I was very entitled. I just, and so I walked by, as an example, because it's pretty abstract at this point. So I'd walk by, a newspaper, I'll be at Starbucks or something, and I walk by a coffee shop and I'll see a newspaper, and they'll 300 people as a Christian, 300 people died, in Iran or Iraq, or something like that, okay? And intellectually I could acknowledge it, but emotionally it cost me nothing because I had an excuse. Well, because they're not Christians. They're not righteous. They're not right. And people might argue with you and say, oh, but Christianity is all about love. Yeah, but don't forget where it's all going. In the end of the day, the righteous, those who are right, inherit. And that was the mentality I had. I realized how entitled I was, and it made me really sick. And that was a very big point for me. And that plays into what you had mentioned earlier about shame and what we're talking about, compassion and kindness. And so, yeah, that's a big deal for me. So hopefully I answered your question. So that was a big turning point. But I came here in 2007 to Fort Wayne and to help to work in the ministry. And I came here to work in the ministry to start a young men's group. And I think they're still around today, but I don't know. Have you ever worked in the ministry? I know you have a very varied background.
We had a youth group that we participated in various activities with. There were some things that we did. We even did road trips where, example, right before the 96 Atlanta Olympics, we went down there and we got to actually visit Atlanta. I went to the Coca-Cola Museum. It was so much fun.
I bet. That sounds great.
And then we actually went to a youth camp afterwards and helped clean that up, basically, is what we did.
Okay. Like maintenance type stuff?
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, there was one in, I believe it was North Carolina that was hurt by like a couple of hurricanes and tropical storms and things like that. And so the following year, we all packed ourselves on a bus again and traveled then to this youth camp on the shores in North Carolina and helped clean up that camp and things like that.
That's very nice.
When it came to other things, it wasn't pushed as much as what you might think it should be.
Okay.
We had various ministries that happened, but it was mostly individuals who went to other countries. There wasn't a lot of ministry within the community.
So was it more like work-based, like works and like you're helping people out, like fixing, picking up trash and things? Or was it a really strong theological component?
It was mostly theological as far as I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So you had missionaries who went out and they did things like that to set up churches in other countries. And, but again, now I'm thinking back and we would have like clothing drives. I do know that.
Which are good things. These are great things.
We would definitely have clothing drives.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And there was a food pantry and things like that. And maybe it's just because I was a kid. I don't remember being as actively involved in it as like what I am now as an adult, being more susceptible to help, not susceptible, but being more prone to volunteer to help things out. So it's just, but it was all for spreading the faith, not bettering the community. I see.
So it was almost like almost just to, in a sense, justify the tax exemption, because I'm not saying that's a strategy. I'm not saying it's a strategy, but the truth is, if there's a nonprofit that is getting all this free money, then it's really good that they do something for the community beyond trying to convince people to agree with them.
Right.
So.
Okay, looks like we have another email question here. Nice. Let's see here. Sarah from Decatur. She considers herself a militant atheist, finds that it is my mission in life to fight the bonds of theism. In our opinion, how should atheists treat theists, both in casual settings and in debate settings? I'm particularly interested in how you view snarky retorts. Do you think we should poke fun when talking with theists? So let's start with the first part of that. How ought we treat theists, both in casual and in debate?
Well, everyone has a point somewhere inherent in what they're saying. So there's always some way you can touch base with someone. I might say, like, make jokes or snarky comments, but the truth is, it's really just a shortcut to having a genuine interaction with someone.
Sure.
Because I'm doing that because I'm willing to engage and talk about it. It's not like I'm trying to shut someone down, or like I said before, when I was a believer, it's not just another wrapping for the same entitlement. I used to be like that. One good thing that you can say about atheists and FreeThought Fort Wayne, I went to, ever since I've gone to FreeThought Fort Wayne to the meetup, one thing you can say walking in is everyone there admits they've been wrong about something.
Yeah.
They've all been I've been very wrong, and that's a very humbling thing. I can say that with a lot more conviction now than when I was a believer, because I had to believe that I had done something wrong. But now I know because I can say, well, I pushed an idea that was not very lifeful for me at all. So my answer to that is I think militant kind of implies violence, and I don't think that's not something I would ever say about myself.
Okay.
And that's one reason why I don't say I'm an anti-theist.
Yeah.
Because I'm not against theists. And that can, but I think that compassion. I think compassion. No matter if you're joking with a person, they have to at least feel that you're not degrading them as a person. You don't think they're stupid. There are a lot of very educated theists.
Absolutely.
And I have a lot to learn from them. Because, I just have to be aware all the time that one of the reasons they might have learned all this is because they're indoctrinated.
Sure.
So
sure.
how would you respond to that?
Well, basically, especially considering where we live in Fort Wayne, we're in the city of churches.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that we're always going to encounter, theists, mainly Christians. We do have other faith groups around here, but it's mainly Christians.
Mainly Christians, yeah.
But I'm kind of along the same vein where, I still treat them with respect because they're still human beings. You can't just dismiss someone just because they have a different opinion of you. They're still human beings.
Yeah.
And so to find that common ground, and the only way that they're going to learn and accept and build from you is by meeting them on that level.
Yeah.
And then you can have an exchange of ideas and you can have respect for each other's ideas. So I definitely agree on that. Yeah. For me, when I hear militant, I don't think really much violent is just aggressive.
Yeah.
Because there are militant insert religion here.
Yeah, they're militant militant vegans.
Yeah.
They're militant carnists. There's people who only eat
I thought you just say carnies.
No, I'm sorry. No, the carnists. Like that's what vegans call All right, wait.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there are those, I suppose. Like so. All right. So I apologize. So there are militant. Every belief and every idea, you can take it to a militant direction. If and it's unfortunate. When I hear militant, I think of things associated with religion. And it could just be because that's the news. That's what we see. I've seen ever since I was a kid with the Iraq War, I'd see militant people, So if I'm not thinking of soldiers, I'm thinking of like religion. That's how I think of. And I don't know. I just think it's kind of off-putting and it's kind of polarizing. So do I say I'm an atheist? There are people, humanists, for instance, a humanist. I know a couple of very, really wonderful humanist people. They don't call themselves atheists. They say they're secularists.
Sure.
Or they say they're brights. I don't think they call themselves bright, but some do call themselves brights, and because they think the word atheist itself is polarizing.
Yes.
So some people might say just calling yourself an atheist is, but I think it's important to say that you're an atheist, just to kind of shift that window of what's considered acceptable dialogue on religion and reason. So I wouldn't go around saying I'm an atheist. I think it's a good way to get people to not listen. That's my view.
Shut it down before it gets started.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the snarky comments.
Oh gosh.
I love snark. That's kind of my go-to move. So I handle snark with snark sometimes, but I try to make it as lighthearted as I can.
Yeah.
So
definitely, I totally agree. It's I think sometimes that's the easiest thing to do is to be sarcastic, but really it comes down to a relationship. That's why as I get older and as I progress, I get in online debates less often. We were talking about that before the show. It's so easy to get wrapped into an online debate, and this is not to do with atheists. This is theists. I know this because I'm talking to theists. That's why I know you guys are getting involved too. And we all know, for the most part, we all know. Maybe not in the moment, but on some level, we're aware that this isn't really going anywhere. So I need to kind of back off my snarkiness a little bit, although it's easy and it's convenient and it's fun sometimes. So as I get older, I'm less.
And I think that also kind of goes hand in hand with the last part of her question of should we poke fun of theists when we're talking to them? Honestly, it depends on how well you know the person. Yeah. I know lots of theists and I can poke fun of them and they'll poke fun at me and it's just a really good banter. But it still all comes back to respect because especially being atheists and having that negative connotation that comes with that word,
definitely.
You have to show still kindness in how you handle it and how you progress through life because that's how you're going to allow us to reclaim that word as a positive or just not even a positive, just as a label that doesn't have to have a negative
it shouldn't automatically create a sort of a psychological gag reflex in a lot of people.
Right.
You have that. So that's how a lot of, I totally agree. So
that was a really good question, Sarah.
Good question. Put us on the spot. I like that. Call in. Do that again. Put us on the spot. I want to hear something. No, don't really. No, but that's a very good question, and I'd like to hear more about that. Thank you very much for your
emailing us
email.
that. Yeah, great question. So have you ever had, speaking of negative connotation, experiences from non-family members? Because family members are almost too easy to have them kind of close the door on you.
Oh, I mean, to disconnect, to like not speak anymore?
Yeah, when they find out that you're an atheist. But maybe just other people, non-family members. Has that happened to you?
No, I once again, it's my tendency, my experience as I get older, my circle gets smaller. And because I think that as people get older in general, that's the idea, is your relationships get stronger, you have fewer friends, you're more invested in them, you spend more time with them. This has been my experience of
I can agree to that, yeah.
Yeah, so there's this natural sort of pruning process,
Sure.
Where you just spend time with less and less people. And it's not that you think bad of them and things, but you just don't have time to do that anymore, to hang out with them. I've never had anyone specifically not speak to me because of my atheism. I think I've had people not speak to me because of my Christianity when I was younger, because I mentioned that being a fundamentalist.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very, very disrespectful, very disrespectful. And the reason why I was disrespectful is because I had a lot of uncertainty. And being a very entitled person, being young, and a lot of uncertainty, it would prick me, it would bother me when I'd be confronted. And
so you more or less took sort of like an anger out on other people, or
how? I was, I was a kid, and there was a little bit of anger going on, but it was a result of confusion and uncertainty, and it wasn't like directed at them personally. It was just something that I had to work through. Okay. But I was given a lot of material to work with. To express my anger, I had a lot of ways of, I had a circle of people who tell me I was right. And I've never been more wrong than when I was surrounded by people telling me I was right. Nice. And that's a lesson. It takes you a little while to learn that lesson in life. But now when everyone's like, oh, you should go with that, I think, wait a second. This didn't work the last time.
Right.
But no, that's my, so I've never been completely cut off. I have had some intense situations, but I get a lot more now. I don't believe in God either, sort of conversations with people.
Okay.
And out of respect for them, I don't tell their other friends who are convinced that they're Christians because they go to church with them.
Right.
But it's actually, it's strange. Sometimes you wonder how many atheists are in church, So, but no, I haven't really been cut off. Have you been cut off by anyone you can think of?
Yes, actually, most recently. And it was prior to that, no. I'd never had any problem with anybody, at least not to my knowledge, kind of cut me off because of the fact that I was an atheist.
Well, how do you know specifically? Because this is
one that I specifically know about because of the fact that I knew these people from a certain social setting, and we would talk and we would carry on and whatever, and there was no problem whatsoever. One day I saw them out at the FreeThought Fort Wayne meeting.
Were they attending the meeting, or were they
just there?
Oh, that's interesting.
And I walked up to them and I said hello, and I said, we chatted for a while, and then I sat down with the group. No big deal. Didn't think anything of it.
So were they aware that was what was going on?
I'm not sure if they were aware at that point in time.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I'm pretty sure they figured it out.
Okay.
And because the next time I saw them out at a restaurant, they would not make eye contact with me.
Really? Wow.
They had to walk past me
that's
to leave. And I've never seen people more determined to keep their eyes on a door before in my entire life. And it took me a while to try to figure out, and by a while I mean like 2 days, but to try to figure it out, because I kept thinking about, like, why did they give me the cold shoulder? Why are they blowing me off? I know they saw me because they kept looking at me. And I was with family at that point. And so I didn't, family was from out of town, so I didn't get up and talk to them or anything like that. I stayed with the family, but I tried to wave at them and make eye contact and things like that. And they completely blew me off.
Wow.
And then as they were leaving, walked straight out the door, didn't say hi to me, walked right past me.
Wow.
And the more I think about it, that's probably the only thing that I can think of as to what it possibly could be. Because the last time that I saw them was when I was at the FreeThought meeting at Old Crown Coffee on North Anthony on Sundays.
Wow.
From 11 to 1.
Yeah. If you're in the area, check it out.
Yeah, Yeah, we're a great group. The last 2 weeks that I've been there, we've had 2 new people.
Cool. That's
Yeah,
good,
and one person came back this last week too. He think he had such a really good time. So it's kind of cool. We're small, but
and it's not just for
friendly.
atheists. Yeah, there's a lot of variety.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variety of people. It's not just for atheists, agnostics, there's humanist people. There's one lady who's Baha'i.
Yes.
She's very
she's so cool.
I won't say
like
names
her.
'cause, you know,
I like talking to her.
She's very, very nice. The lady I'm speaking about is very, very nice. There are people who are religionists, or whatever you want to term, they're believers. They have religions. So it's not just exclusive. It's there at the coffee shop, Old Crown Sundays.
Come drink coffee with us and discuss things with us. And it doesn't even have to be about theology. I mean, yesterday I spent a good half hour just talking books with people and music, movies. We cover it all pretty much. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely.
And so it's a lot of fun. It's good times.
If you want a real argument, just start talking about politics or football or something. Like, you can get some really intense arguments. Those are ones I just kind of back off and watch because they get too intense. But so definitely.
Okay, we have a comment from another person.
Nice.
She's from Fort Wayne, it looks like. I'm going to be blunt. I saw your Kent Hovind debate. You guys tanked.
Oh, wow.
How could life have possibly come from a rock? It would seem you need more faith to believe that than to believe a creator made it so.
Wow. Well, I don't think that we tanked.
I'm not so sure that we necessarily tanked.
No, that's kind of
I know if I was in the debate, I would have said things at certain times that. But
so it's not really a question. It's more of a statement. So
no, that's fine. We like comments too.
Yeah, I definitely like. Yeah. So how to respond to a statement like that? Okay, I would say, well, she's talking about life and rocks. I'm not a biologist.
Right.
I know some biologists. I know that they're experts, and I know that there's a lot of evidence to back up the claims that support speciation. That when it comes to the origin of life and has our life evolved, I know that evolution has been observed in laboratories, and it seemed as if she was singling out the origin of life coming from a rock.
That's kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah, that's kind of what. Yeah, that's the scientists have created amino acids, the amino acids necessary for life in laboratories, and if you can do that, then and given enough time and enough situations, there are billions of astronomical objects. There are billions of stars, and there's millions of galaxies, and there's so much out there, and there's so much time has passed that we've had every opportunity for life to begin. So
and for me, it has a lot to do with time also, because to sit there and say, well, I can't witness evolution. Well, no, evolution doesn't happen necessarily overnight. No. It takes millions of years for something to change so drastically as to become a variation of a species, or even, again, not a biologist, but that is kind of, I think, oversimplifying it to say that it came from a rock.
Definitely. That's not what... One big misunderstanding people have that kind of lead them in the wrong direction is a lot of people think in terms of the organism itself evolving in a vacuum. Yeah. But it's not. There are environmental factors. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of change that has gone on over the last however many million years.
And change that we know happened
because of
sediment
records.
Levels.
Because and you can see
and things like that you can prove.
Yeah. So I think that also it's a matter of certainty. The truth is, I don't know exactly how things started going. I don't know how life began per se. I don't know. Later on, I'm sure we'll get into the Kalam, like different like cosmological argument, like people talking about the origin of everything, the universe, and you don't have to know. Like my answer is I don't know. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that I agree with the claim that God did it. I think that Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioned.
Are you comfortable with I don't know?
Oh, definitely, because I think that's the most reasonable thing. The truth is I don't know about most things. Most questions you ask, I don't know.
And I think that's really important too. It's okay to be comfortable with I don't know because then you don't have to search for a reason. Then you don't have to.
You don't feel put on the spot.
You don't have to make something up to fill in the gaps.
No, you don't have to have the wishful thinking.
Yeah.
You don't have to gravitate to these ideas of an afterlife or of an eternity. The mature, the adult answer is, I don't know, to most questions that people are going to ask. So, yeah. So thank you for your comment. It's got me thinking a lot. So definitely keep sending those comments in. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, we have another email.
Oh, great.
Oh, how wonderful. Yay. Okay, this one is Stephen from New Haven.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen. Do you feel that atheism benefits, harms, or remains neutral as a factor in one's quality of life? In a phrase, is it worth it? I assume yes, so I have a follow-up.
Okay.
Assumes we're going to say, like, yes.
Pretty good.
Would you honestly say there were no downsides to becoming an atheist? And I don't just mean because you may have been ostracized. If you were a familyless individual, would becoming an atheist be a benefit? Wow, that could get really deep.
Those are
I kind of like this one.
Yeah, both questions are very good. And I like how they work into each other.
Yeah, exactly. As far as one's quality of life, that's in how you make it. I mean, that doesn't have anything. There are people who have a faith whose quality of life is not very good. There are people with faith whose life is great. And same applies for atheists. And so I don't really think that, I guess that's physically speaking, or
Yeah, so I guess it depends. Like if you look at, so all right, when I was a believer, I would say definitely it has improved the quality of my life in one way, but it's also made it harder in a different way. And I don't mean socially speaking. So it's improved my life in the sense that I'm no longer beating myself up. I'm no longer metaphorically, whipping myself.
Yeah. Hopefully not literally.
Not literally, no. Although some people do.
Yeah.
Some religions do, definitely. But no, I'm no longer beating myself up. Okay, and I'm no longer wrecked with shame. The thing with it is that for me to beat myself up all the time, it like that. For me to look around and not see that other people are having a relationship that I supposedly could have, and I'm excluded for some reason. Or that I read the Bible, as I mentioned before, and I'm like, oh, why aren't miracles going on around all the time? I don't get it. Why can't these things happen? I don't see. So there's a very large amount, or I should say, there's a huge lack of self-compassion. For me to always be, praying and then lay myself out before some deity, saying, and abasing myself. There's a major lack of self-compassion, and how this builds into relationships is that. The truth is, you really can't trust people who aren't very self-compassionate. It's hard to trust people who do treat themselves really poorly. With someone who's just always, they're just always down and they're always thinking, man, I'm a failure.
I can agree.
I fail at everything. It's difficult to trust someone who lacks self-compassion or compassion for themselves. It's hard to believe that they would be compassionate and kind to me or to other people around. So I think that kind of slowly over time that erodes my relationships by making it less likely to have genuine human interactions with people that aren't negative. That's kind of how it is. Because you can definitely have a genuine human interaction if you get into an argument or something.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, easy. But over time, treating yourself poorly kind of drives people away.
Sure, yeah.
So in that way, yes, it has improved my life. And another way it has challenged me. It's harder. It's better, but it's harder. And that is that society, I should say culture and religion, because religion's mixed in with culture really, really tight. Mm-hmm. It does that to survive. It's just very, very smart. So it's mixed in, okay? Culture itself is a sort of a buffer. There's something called terror management theory.
Okay.
And the idea is that culture is a buffer between a person and thoughts of mortality, because we're different than animals. You see, like an animal responds pretty invariably to its environment. So if it sees a tiger, it runs away. If it doesn't see a tiger, there's one there, it eats it. It doesn't, But humans are unusual in that they can turn their attention from the present flow of time, and they can basically imagine things that aren't there, and they can suffer as if it was. So
when they see a tiger, they try to pet it.
Yeah, they do stuff like that, and then the ancestors don't really progress, But long story short, it's made. I've had to be more honest about my mortality. Sure. When I was a believer, I could just say, I didn't even have to acknowledge people's death, like my family member's death, because is my grandma really dead?
That's true.
Yes, she's dead. Back when she had died, I could just be like, well, no, she's. I was away from me. I was allowed to.
You'll see her again.
I'll see her again.
Yeah.
So I never really dealt with the fact that she had died. Now I am. Now I have to acknowledge it, but I have to acknowledge it in context to my own mortality, and that's something that's harder. So The thing that's made it harder is that I have to be more honest with my mortality. That's more difficult. And definitely there's social parts, me and friends and family it's more difficult. But that, compared to that, having to acknowledge your mortality, for me, that's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, no, it's a really good answer.
Oh, well, yeah,
Yeah, I like that. I definitely see it as improving my life because, much like you, I don't have the worry, the guilt, the shame.
Definitely.
Am I living up to what I'm supposed to live up to? And what if I'm not following it right? What if I'm not doing it right? What if this denomination is correct and we aren't? I mean, there's a constant what if factor that has to happen, and I don't have that anymore because there is no what if. It's just, nope, it's not there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's easier for me than to focus on things and to be happier in my life. Honestly, I think I'm much happier now. As for things that have been made harder because of it, I know not the ostracizing thing, but honestly, I think that's really the hardest part about it is just, I do live with the knowledge that family members, how do I want to phrase this? They are concerned, they're worried. I'm slightly letting my mother down, in those situations.
Being disappointed. I think I'm disappointing to a couple people in my life too.
But I don't let it bother me that much because I can't help the way other people feel about me being an atheist. I can just be the best version of me, and how other people react to it is how they're going to react to it. Being shunned at a restaurant, it hurt. I'm not going to lie. Because like I said, that was probably one of the first times I've ever had somebody who's not a family member out and out disregard me as a whole because of one aspect of who I am.
Well, that's the entitlement. That's the entitlement I mentioned before. This idea that you can distance yourself from other people because you're right and they're wrong.
And it's
so you don't have to acknowledge your perspective of yourself.
Is what it is. It's cruel.
It's very cruel.
It's very cruel. I have friends who have faith. I have friends of other denominations who aren't Christians because they do exist in Fort Wayne. I would never treat them that way. It just, wow. It blew my mind when I kind of thought that. Now, again, I may be way off base. They won't tell me because they won't talk to me. So I don't actually know if that's what it is or not. But it is. To me, it just seems very heartless and cruel for them to turn their back on me because of this. And
what was that second part of the question? Did we answer that as well?
I think we pretty well got through it.
Because it was trying to answer both with one.
Right.
Okay.
If you were a family-less individual, would becoming atheist be a benefit?
No, I think if you're a family, I'm imagining someone who's homeless or someone who's has nowhere to live, or they're very poor, or maybe bad health. That's what I'm imagining. But
I think family-less just means
like a single individual.
Let's say maybe they lived in a town thousands of miles away, or maybe both their parents have passed on and they're unremarried, and
they don't really have strong connections. Maybe
with extended family. I think maybe that's the point of that.
I think that what I mentioned before about culture being a buffer between us and our sense of losing control, because inevitably, like, we are aware that we will die. Animals aren't. So we suffer in a different way than they do. And we're aware of it. And to protect ourselves from that realization, from the knowledge of that, there's culture. We have our kids. If you don't have kids, you have groups you can be part of.
Yeah.
You have charities you can donate to. You have churches that people go to. And that's what religion is used for. It's used to sort of create a buffer to protect people. So but I think that as time goes on and people are more aware of other religions, people are more aware of how religion is almost invariably associated with the geographical location that you grew up in, the time you lived, the religion of your parents. People have to start saying, wait a second here. I don't think it's a coincidence that I was a Christian, raised as a Christian in the Midwest, with two Christian parents. So basically what I'm saying is the adult position is skepticism, as John Loftus has mentioned before, quite a few occasions. The adult position is being skeptical, is saying, I just don't know. I need to have good reason to believe whatever it is I believe. So would a person be better? I say a person would be better off, but I think it'd be more difficult than just for them emotionally. So.
Yeah, in this day and age, I think you're very much so correct.
Yeah.
Do you think it's getting easier with the internet, though?
I definitely think it's getting easier with the internet. It's getting easier in some ways, definitely. In other ways, maybe not. But I think that in this case, it's easier to find people who, agree with you. But it's also easier to find people who agree with you for bad reasons. As a believer, people weren't as concerned. Now I look back, people weren't as concerned with what I believe necessarily. They just want me to agree with them. So for instance, like, they just want me to agree to believe the same thing they're believing. They were never really concerned with why I believe that. Like, I have a completely bogus reason for agreeing with someone, but if that's all they care about hearing is that I agree with them, then what kind of relationship can we possibly hope for if that's a fundamental part of our relationship? That's why So in this day and age, I think it's definitely much easier.
Great.
So
would you say it's a benefit then? Because there's still people out there who refuse to become more knowledgeable about things, even though the internet is literally at their fingertips.
Well, I would say, I think it was Amos Oz, I believe, said this. He said, in regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, forgive me if I have the author wrong, but he said, in regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is that they can fight. They'll keep fighting. Imagine they keep fighting, but there's something they can't change, that the whole world around them is going to continue growing. So they can have their fight. They can have their conflict. And I'm not trying to bring up Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
No,
I'm just using this as an analogy So the world will continue to change around the people who isolate themselves in a little bubble. That's my answer to that. So yes, it can't harbor that, but it's unfortunate for the people who allow themselves to be caught up in a bubble, but the world will continue to grow around them.
Sure.
So that's my view.
Yeah.
So,
good stuff. Okay.
Some good questions today.
Very good questions today. Thank you, everybody who has called in or emailed in and asked questions. We love those. Keep them coming. And that way it gives us things to talk about here for
definitely.
The hour that we are live.
Because our lives are interesting, but we'd like to hear your views. And
so then I take it you're not raising your family in the church. Is that something that was agreed upon within the marriage, or are we getting too personal?
Well, no. Well, yeah, we haven't really talked. Well, we are. We're trying to be fair. Me and my wife, we're trying to be fair and to raise our kids, to basically educate them with all the possibilities, because it would be really wrong. It'd be just as wrong to say, oh, well, you're going to be a Buddhist because I was a Buddhist, because you're all the way back. Or it'd be just as wrong to say that as to say you're going to be an atheist, So the idea is to do your best to make them be responsible kids and to care about each other, and then to leave it up to them and to not shame them into any view. So that's where we stand. I think that's where most people should stand, but so that's my take on parenting, although I doubt you wouldn't come to me for parenting tips. Don't do that.
Do you think that's easier than having the children follow in your footsteps? Because I definitely see the benefit of what you're doing with giving them, because I tried that with other people's children in my life. Yeah, not my own, but versus raising them the way you are raised, to continue on almost a tradition. And
that would definitely make the thought of my mortality a lot easier to bear. And that's what a lot of people do.
Okay.
They raise their kids to have their same, because in a sort of abstract sense, my views, my values, my thoughts, and my perspective of the world can be carried on. It's a certain kind of immortality. And I think that, so that would be comfortable and that'd be nice. But as I mentioned before, I'm actually less concerned that someone agrees with me than why. Yeah. Because in the back of my mind, I know how easy it is to get caught up in a situation where you surround yourself with people who agree with you. Things erode in your relationships. They fall apart. And definitely more interested in why rather than
sure, definitely. Okay, we have another email question coming here. Nice. We've got Greg coming in from Fort Wayne. What are atheist eulogies like? Do they still even have viewings and such? No disrespect, I simply don't know what atheist funerals are like. What would someone want said for them after they've gone if they don't believe in an afterlife, or believe in life after death? Thank you, Greg. That's a great question.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't think I'm very fit to answer that. I might be fit to answer that, but
man, well, I can't.
I've never attended an atheist funeral myself.
I've been to a secular funeral.
Okay.
I have. When I was in high school, sadly, one of someone my age passed away. And it was just very celebratory. It comprised of a couple of songs being played, people getting up and speaking. There were no, I mean, it's going to be basically along the same vein. I mean, you're just not going to have a prayer. You're not going to have any sort of religion put into it, but you're still going to have wonderful memories shared, stories that are told. You can have flowers, obviously. You can have pictures. You can have all kinds of just beautiful life celebration.
Yeah, definitely.
Ideas.
Life affirming things.
Yeah, I mean, like for mine, I don't even really think I'm going to need anything for my body because that's going to science. So basically just get together. I got a couple of songs that, I'd like to share, but honestly, I'm going to be dead. So if you can hear to it, it won't matter.
I spend a lot of time thinking about my life now.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time. I'm not in a what's best for me. What do I want right now? And but a lot of people think that. In fact, I called her earlier, or I think it was an email question last week, or when we did it last, it was 2 weeks ago, and they said something about hedonism, and we responded to their question as if hedonism meant just like shallow, empty sort of pleasure. But then afterward, I started thinking, well, maybe they didn't mean shallow, empty pleasure, because hedonism could also mean other things, like good relationships. Like happiness, like hope, like life-affirming activities, like getting a bucket list and just hitting that bucket list, I'd rather do that. So in that sense, it's been a while. But I'm very hedonistic in that way. It's like, I want to get everything done now. I want to have no regrets. I want to have great relationships. I want to have good food. I want to have great times with people and really do my best to take my life seriously enough to where I don't have any regrets near the end of my life. And like you said, I could say what you said confidently. It really doesn't matter that much in the end. I just want everyone to be ready to go when I go. So they're set for the rest of their life.
So what happens after you die then? What do you want? Do you want like a special service? Do you want more like a wake where everyone just kind of parties it up in your honor? Or
my dad's from West Virginia. So I don't think of wakes as the same as some northern people might. They're very fun.
I used to like fun Irish party.
Oh, see, that's okay. That's different. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that sounds cool. I like the idea of people having fun and enjoying, and I would like them to talk about the kind of stuff that I thought about during my life.
Sure.
That made life more bearable. So like things I enjoyed, things we enjoyed together. But I don't want it to be about me. This isn't just a celebration of me. It's about us, celebration of us. So I think that's, that'd be good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, I hope that answers your question. It's
a good question.
Good question.
Yeah, I had never thought about. I haven't for a while. I haven't thought about my funeral.
Really, the best person for that would be Victoria, because that's kind of what she does.
Definitely,
she's a humanist celebrant, and she does funerals and all kinds of other wonderful things for people who are not within a church or religious group. So she's going to definitely be the one to answer that question best. But we do have another.
Wow.
We do have one more.
Lined up. Great.
As a longtime atheist, I've often been asked how I could have morals and a sense of what is right and wrong without a belief in God. As atheists, how would you describe where you developed your sense of morals without religion defining them? From John. Thank you, John.
Thanks. Okay. Well, I think it's important to note that a lot of people when I was a believer, I would tell people that I was a believer for one reason is because I would say, without God, we have no morals. But that isn't really the truth. The reason I did is because I had faith. I mentioned, I just had faith, which is the same reason why later in life I met Muslims and other like Buddhist people and Wiccans actually, and they said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So
I think the golden rule is very universal.
It's
not limited, and it's not just limited to religious. It's also just in ancient societies as a whole.
The Code of Hammurabi, I believe, it's where it was first.
Very nice.
It was the first time it was mentioned.
Throw that out.
Yeah. Well, I know it came, because it's a good question. And keep these good questions are great. So I think that you want to be treated fairly.
Absolutely.
And I want to be treated fairly.
Absolutely.
And we have the hard way with the capacity to empathize and to imagine other people's states, their state of mind, how they feel. We have the research is still being conducted when it comes to mirror neurons. Why we, as far as areas in our brain that fire as if we are acting out in a way that people we are observing are acting out. So if we see someone get burnt, there are mirror neurons in our brains that fire as if we're getting burnt. Now, the research is still being done, but there's something interesting there. It's something to pay attention to. But we have the capacity to empathize.
Yeah.
And we have the desire to be treated fairly. So I want to treat other people fairly. I want to live in a world where I see the type of thing that I would want people to treat me like. So it's not, I wouldn't even say it's right or wrong on that level. I'd say it's innate.
Yeah.
It's just
going to
innate.
say that. Yeah.
It's not even right or wrong.
Because I do think sympathy and empathy are both very much so innate. Because small children understand that without fully comprehending any kind of religion or anything like that. They can understand that, if someone is hurt and crying, they will walk up to you, they're wobbly up to you and give you a hug. And that's just something that they know how to do. It's not something that they're taught.
There's all right, so as children develop, I know it's because I have kids, and a lot of people who have kids, they follow along with the child development. Like, oh, this is when the kid, basically they follow in development. So they learn object permanence. When they leave a room and they come back, they're not surprised anymore that the bottle is still sitting there. And then eventually they learn that other people experience things just as vivid as their own experience, So I would say that's something that develops over time. It's not about morality, really. It's about wanting to be treated fairly and have the capacity to empathize with others.
And as an adult, it should just pretty much come naturally. We've lived a long enough life to know that, if you punch somebody for no reason, that causes that person pain. If you hand them an apple when they're hungry or give them something to drink when they're thirsty, that's going to better their life. And that's really the goal, is because we don't have a reward in the afterlife. We just have now.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good way to live.
Yeah, and it's a good way to end the show. And we thank you very much for everybody watching, for all of your questions that you sent in to us. Join us again next time here on We Are Atheists.
Definitely.
So, all right, good stuff.